Do you believe the story of virgin birth, Mary? What are your thoughts? Like, do you believe in the credibility of that story?
Do I believe it's a fact, or do I believe it's truth?
Do you believe? Well, what's the difference?
That's the key.
Okay, so what's the difference?
A fact is a thing
can't be debated, right?
A fact is a thing that can be scientifically verified.
Okay,
right. That's what we now understand. A truth doesn't necessarily have to do with fact. Truth is a far deeper.
Well, both ways. What
idea.
do you think about it?
No, there's no fact whatsoever about the virgin birth. It exists in one section of the entire Gospels.
Okay.
No one else mentions it. Matthew doesn't mention it. It's just in Luke. That means 90 A.D., so 60 years after Jesus' death. We can go back to the writings that we find, a little bit earlier. There's some writings of Paul in 50s. Virgin birth is never mentioned in those writings. The virgin birth was a problem that arose out of Paul, because Paul, who never met Jesus, never spoke to Jesus, had nothing to do with Jesus whatsoever, but who claims to have had this experience of the risen Jesus long after Jesus died, in which, according to him, Jesus makes him the 13th apostle, right? An apostle was somebody who walked and talked with Jesus, and there were 12 of them. And Paul, who neither walked nor talked with Jesus, says that the risen Christ turned him into the 13th apostle and gave him this new message. And Paul goes around and he starts preaching this version of Jesus that the apostles had never heard of before. Jesus wasn't even a man in Paul's view. Jesus was born of pure light. He is a new genus of being. He came to earth as this sort of begotten, the only begotten Son of God, in order to deal with original sin. Again, Jesus never mentioned anything about original sin. It's not in any of the Gospels. In Paul's imagination, when Adam and Eve fell, all human beings were born in sin, and Jesus' death cleared that sin for everyone for all of time. This is Paul. No one except Paul had ever said or thought anything like this. It was the first time these words were ever written. It's now basic Christianity. But here's the problem. If everyone who is born of sin until Jesus is born and rids everyone of sin, then Jesus can't be born. Paul himself never said Jesus can't be born. He just let the contradiction live. But then later on, by the time you get to the 90s, in answer to criticism, in answer to critics saying, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Then doesn't make any sense. He himself was born, then he had sin. Was this new idea that, no, Jesus wasn't born in the same way. He was born of a virgin. It's mentioned once. It's mentioned in the year 90. And there's no reason to think that it's anything other than what it sounds like, an answer to a problem.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.